Okay, so this is our second discussion, and today we're going to be talking about chapter one and your introduction and your preface. Um, so, in your book, you said that it was after 68 years of living your life that you finally went onto a spiritual path. What triggered that for you? Like, what actually got that going?
Well, after that's not quite, it's after 68 years that I fully embraced a spiritual path and started spiritually awakening. And in the book and later chapters, the reader will see that I did study spirituality from 1992 to 2002. And I don't want to get too much into that because it's another chapter. But I studied it and I had some mystical experiences, but it was basically just study, and then I dropped it to start working. I just dropped it. And what led me back to it in 2024 was I had a breakdown at work that I couldn't do the work anymore. And again, these are in later chapters. And so when I was over the breakdown mentally and physically, it came back to me that I needed to get back to it and start doing the work. So it was a breakdown at work and a never increasing feeling of depression and anxiety and isolation.
Okay, so you said something interesting. You said that in 1992, I think it was, that you went to some spiritual classes. What did you learn in those classes? What was it about?
Well, it wasn't really classes, and I'll give more detail with the later chapters, but basically I had a lot of anxiety about death, and so I asked a friend about it, and she led me to some books to read. And I was also in a 12-step program, and I went to
Mm.
that because I had heard of 12-step programs a few years earlier, but I wasn't interested in them. And I started attending a spiritual center, and I read a lot of books, and but the problem was for me that I didn't change any of my thinking patterns.
Mm.
And I learned much later that it was necessary for me to change my thinking patterns about myself in order to get anything out of any of it. So it was too easy to drop it when I started working.
Yeah, the thinking patterns is something that we all struggle with, I think. Um, there's a lot of things that I also, when I look back on my life, when I was younger, how I used to think and the things I used to, like my thought process, it has changed a lot, but there are still some things that I feel are like belief system oriented that need to be changed at the root, for me to be different about it. But sometimes I feel like those things are not that big of a deal where I need to put attention to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. These were more belief systems about myself and feelings of inadequacy. They were not belief systems about spirituality. They were belief systems about myself.
Mm.
Still believing I needed others to validate how I felt about myself, and
Mhm.
putting myself down and trying to prove myself. So it was that kind of belief system of thinking I needed the material world for validation that interfered with what I was doing in the from 1992 to 2002.
Yes. Okay. So you said that there were a few ways that you kind of went deep into your spirituality and learning about it and part of your journey. Two of those things were life between lives and past life regressions. What is the difference between the two of them?
Past life regression, and I did the life between lives in 2001, but I didn't do a straight past life regression until 2025, although the life between lives goes into the past life. A past life regression is they're both hypnosis, not the kind of hypnosis like stage hypnosis where people dance around, you're fully conscious during it. The past life regression takes you into one state of consciousness, and I'm not even going to try to name it because I don't know which is which. And it unlocks the past lives. They'll take you on a relaxation journey called an induction. That's the first step until you're relaxed and your right brain is set aside. So your thinking brain is set aside in both processes. And then they'll ask, go to a past life. First, they may take you to childhood, and then they'll ask you to go to a past life. And in each of these, they say the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't think about it. And then you'll go through a past life and just they ask you questions. What do you see next? What do you see next? Most of the past life regressions end with almost all end with the end of the life. Like, how does it end? A lot of them now say what happens right after the death. You know, what's happening. And they'll take you a little ways. Some of them have you meet a spirit guide or other teachers, but it's very short. The one I did was a little longer with that. And that's the one that's on my website. The Life Between Lives will take you through past lives, but that's not the point. The point is what's happening with your soul in between lives. Where's your soul when you're not in an incarnation? And those are amazing, because not the first amazing thing about it for me was actually being in the spirit world. And it's different for everybody, like the near-death experiences are different for everybody. And the way I explained it when I was doing it is it's whatever we want it to be. So if we need a lake, we'll get a lake, because the soul thinks it's not the same creative process. You create it by thinking about it, it's hard to explain in human terms. So they'll take you to the spirit world and take you where you need to go. It's when it started, it was a set formula. It's not anymore. So you come with a list of questions you need answered. They recommend you do just a past life regression first to see if you can get into that state where you can do the life between lives. But I saw, for example, pre-birth planning. I met higher beings that were assisting my soul. I saw the Akashic records. I just floated around the spirit world. And I had some questions about my purpose, and those will be answered. More people nowadays are asking questions about how can they help humanity as a whole. It's also in both types. It can go get to the roots of something that's unexplainable, like a phobia or a behavior pattern or a family dynamic. And I'm not telling people not to go to therapy because I'm in therapy, but it can get beyond that to a root of that. And in the Life Between Lives, I found out that I had agreed to some of the things that I thought were really awful in my childhood. And it was nice not to blame my mother anymore. So Life Between Lives is much more profound and much longer, but it's mostly spent in the spirit world. And you are your soul self
Yeah.
in the Life Between Lives. In the past life, when you're doing the past life, you're just going into, I don't want to say just, that's not the right word. You're going into your superconscious or subconscious mind, but you're not your soul self until you're actually out of the body and you're doing the soul memories in the Life Between Lives.
So what does that feel like to be in that different stage of consciousness? where you are aware that this is different to a specific life or different to Lynne here now? Like how do you feel or how do you know the difference between that? Like, do you feel bigger? Do you feel more connected to something? How do you know the difference?
You mean in the life between lives or the past life regression?
Both even.
In the past life regression, I did another type of hypnosis session, and in either case, you can have, if the life has some trauma or something, and in the past life, a person can start to re-experience the trauma, and a skilled facilitator, if they know that you need to look at that trauma, they'll immediately take you as an observer so you're not experiencing it. It was, I did not, for mine, I did not like, and it's different for each person. I did not like go into the life so I was actually living it. Some people do. They're very visual and they feel like they're actually there. For me, it was just, and I didn't get visuals on it. I got detail. I was giving detail after detail after detail, and I was just spitting them out. I hate to use that word, but I wasn't Lynne and I wasn't my soul self. It was my they call subconscious with a capital S, as to distinguish it from like the subconscious mind of psychology or psychiatry. I was just giving these details. They were just coming. So I was very relaxed and able to give these details. In the life between lives, and I've never had a near-death experience, but I watch a lot of videos and I know people have had near-death experiences. I don't like to do comparisons because in either case, everybody's experience is different. But for me, listening to a lot of these and knowing people, the life between lives for me was a near-death experience without the being near-death part. So I was in my expansive state. I was after that, I was certain that death is not the end. I was certain that we are all souls. I could see things, and I don't even like to use I because it was my soul. I could, and again, I wasn't visual in this either, but it was a very expanded state. For example, in the past life regression on my website, because the woman took me into the spirit world, I, as this individual, did some things that were not, I don't want to say good or bad, but were not what the soul select came to do. And the instant the soul was out of the body, the soul was aware that that's not what the soul came from. So spirit is from a much broader perspective, not only the physical nature of it, but the knowledge nature of it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what that is like. I've heard so many people describe it in so many different ways, also listening to near-death experiences, but it's like you can never know until you experience it yourself,
Right.
you know?
And what I wanted to add is, people, let's see the after effects of near-death experiences, the positive after effects, like transformative in various ways. I've had this very same after effects.
Wow. So
So,
it's actually a really good thing to experience if you feel called to it because like you say, it's like a near-death experience without the death actually
right,
like
and
going through a trauma, like whether it be traumatic or whether it happens in your sleep or
right.
you don't have to actually die, you know.
Yeah, I can say, and if someone were to ask me, do I do this? And I can't speak for everybody. Everybody's at a different place. But for me, and I mention it in the book too, I was not ready for it until I cleared out the negative thinking and the negative behavior patterns. I just wasn't ready for it because getting spiritually ready is a step-by-step process. And that's why when I did it in 2001, it was amazing and interesting. but it didn't transform me because I wasn't ready for it. I hadn't done the work on the Lynne self to do this and get any transformational benefit out of it. So each person who does it, I would say, has to be in a state for themselves where they feel ready for it.
Yes, and that's an important thing to remember as well. And, you know, throughout your whole book, it's basically a journey through your transformation from going basically from a state of chronic anxiety and depression to unconditional self-love. So my question is, how did you know when you quote unquote reached unconditional self-love? Was there like a moment where you were like, whoa, I actually love myself unconditionally now?
There was a moment, but I have unconditional self-love, and that's true. But there's always little remnants that come forth. So it's not perfect. Nobody's perfect, not human beings. So when the little remnants come, I know how to address them. What did it for me is between the two life between lives. Maybe it was after, I think, I don't remember when it was. It's in the book, I don't remember. So it may have been between the two sessions that I did recently in 2024 and 2025. I've had other spiritual experiences, and I was doing a meditation, or I think it was a meditation by listening to music. And all of a sudden from within me, not from outside of me, um, this wellspring of unconditional love just burst forth, and it said, I am magnificent. I am a part of God. I am magnificent. And I just felt that unconditional self-love. And then the experience, feeling of that experience itself lasted about a day. After that, there were still some remnants. So in October, I saw one of the Life Between Lives facilitators by Zoom, and he did what's called a present life healing, where the feelings from childhood, it didn't go into past lives, but he did take you into your soul state, and you merged with source energy, and you give back to any parent or bully or anybody what they took from you with love. And that really cemented it.
That's really cool. Um, I've also had a couple of uh, I don't know what to call it really, emotional, spiritual type experiences while meditating, also very spontaneous. And I think now that I think back on it, it did feel like an unconditional love type feeling. At the time, I didn't know how to describe it or what to say about it. It's just like you just feel whole and complete and full, and you can just
Mhm.
stay in that moment forever and it feels perfect.
Yeah.
And nothing else matters. It's just everything, everything at once now.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
like to feel all that all the time. I get a lot of those
yeah.
experiences now from when I feel my spirit guide during meditation. This
Yeah.
one was from within, which was different.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, I can only imagine how much it took in terms of healing to go from a place of chronic depression and anxiety to go to that feeling, especially, and when people read your book, they'll understand the things that you've experienced, from childhood and with your family and, during your adolescence and all that. It was a tough hand that you chose.
Yeah, I mean, it started not with the December Life Between Lives, but it started when I was ready to actually practice. The first thing I was guided to do was reread the books by Michael Newton and dig up what was a cassette tape of the recording of my 2001 session. And I talk about that in the book, and I listened to it, and compared with the methods today, it was pretty, basic. but I listened to it and things started to change. I heard what I didn't hear the first
Mm,
time when I listened to it, because I hadn't listened to it since 2001. So
yes. So when you went into these regressions and you learned that you were responsible for your entire life. Basically, you chose all of this, whether it be your parents or whatever challenges that were put in your life, you chose all of this. What was the first thing that went through your mind when you realized or remembered that you chose all of this?
I'm trying to think, because what's interesting about that is I did not, and some people may, it's, they unlock the spirit world, what your soul is ready for. So there were gaps in what was unlocked. And to answer the question, I already believed from my study in the 1990s. The beliefs didn't change. It's just I wasn't practicing them. So I had already learned that I believed that we chose our parents. I just wasn't ready to practice them. It was interesting. I already believed it, but I hadn't internalized it. And I had already, but I knew it intellectually. But as far as choosing our circumstances, that's always interested me, because you don't see everything and we have free will. So it's not like I can't say I chose every single thing that was unpleasant in my life from age 0 to now, because we have free will. I have free will in my situation, and I can make different decisions now. So I think I yeah, spontaneously believe from spontaneous memories that I veered way well off the path for the past 25 years. It was a relief in the sense that children, young children like babies and even through junior high or high school, don't have the free will we have as adults. So those experiences I know I chose because I didn't have free will not to live with my parents when I was 5 years old. So it really was, when I learned the reason for it, it helped me develop self-love, because I realized that I had chosen those to develop self-love, because then I'm like, oh, I got through that and I've still developed self-love. So it was eye-opening and not distressing at all. And I also got enough to see that it wasn't just my soul's choice, it was their soul's choices. It was because it was a planning. It's not just one soul saying, I'm going to choose these parents and these parents are stuck with me. It's a whole planning thing. Again, I'm using earth terms, that the souls do come together with choices to make a family unit, or even friendships down the road, marriages, all sorts of things. There can be karma involved, which to me is not a punishment from God. It's like souls wanting to balance out what happened before. So there's all sorts of things that affect choices. So for example, and I don't mean to go on and on, I have met people, and I'm not judging them, because I don't know if this is their path or if it's free will. I have met people who say, well, my soul chose to be miserable, a heroin addict, and suicidal. And that kind of, and I have to be careful about my own saying some things that my soul's choice, because I know that can be true, but it can also be someone remaining in what I call a victim mode, and as a reason or excuse not to get help. So if what I'm saying is, if someone who's listening to this is in a really bad place, life between, to explore, rather than give up and say, well, my soul chose this, to really explore, even if the soul chose it, the soul may have chosen it to overcome it. And it may just be because the person's afraid to move forward. And I know from personal experience, because all I did was play the victim for 68 years. Victim, everything was victim. And it was a way of staying stuck. So it's interesting.
I definitely agree with you. And I have also met people who have that type of mentality. Like, my soul chose this, so it's kind of inevitable. It's, my destiny. I have to, this is who I am, and, nothing can change and whatever. And I've also wondered about that. Like, obviously, if you chose this from a soul perspective, there was a certain lesson to be learned, a certain challenge needing to be overcome, a certain life experience that you need to, grow from and evolve into something that you have wanted, or, for yourself from a soul perspective. So, what do you think happens when we don't learn and grow from these life experiences and challenges? So, let's say, I'm an addict and I make the excuse that, well, my soul chose this, so I'm going to be an addict forever, and then I die. What do you think would happen? Because I chose not to learn and grow while I was alive.
This is just my opinion. The first thing I would say is, like I just said, that may not be a soul choice. It may be a soul making a choice that was not part of what I call the soul's blueprint. That was not the choice. And in my own self-exploration after I did these sessions, I saw or remembered that there was another path I could have taken way back in the 1990s that was the chosen preferred path, and that I kept getting hints, you're off course, you're off course, you're off course. But I didn't follow the hints because of my thinking patterns. And so I was off the path. I was way off the path. I do give thanks that I studied it, because in 2024, I would have had not known what to come back to if I hadn't known about it in the 1990s. But so that's the first level of exploration. Did my soul really choose this, or am I off path? And people, if you're not doing life between lives or not ready for it, I would suggest just starting to practice slowing down, 2 minutes of meditation, relaxation, taking time. We get so busy, we multitask, we don't take the time. I would suggest just taking a minute just to relax, like every 2 hours, and getting into the relaxation, because then at least because I started meditation, I could be relaxed enough to start exploring, was this a choice or was I off path? And if it is a choice, like I say, it could be to overcome. If, in my opinion, if I had a nervous breakdown and said I'm a victim and killed myself, and that I never thought of that. My soul, not my human self. My human self would say I never want to come back to this, planet again. But as a soul, the soul would be eager to return and learn the lesson that the soul didn't learn at the time the soul came to learn it. No soul is forced to come back. That's what I said in the past life regression in the spirit session. This is what came out, that no soul is forced to even incarnate at all. The soul can stay in spirit. So everything's free will, and the soul has absolute free will, unless the soul has done true evil. And then there may be a variety of things. No one goes to hell, but the soul may be isolated or kept from incarnating for a long time. But let's say it's just a person who was chose to overcome heroin addiction and didn't. That soul would be eager as in the soul state to return and finish the lesson. So when we're in our soul state, we have a totally different mentality. It's I want to learn this lesson, and It's kind, I don't, souls don't have emotions like we do, but the closest emotion I can say is regret,
Mm,
right? Because the soul will meet with a council and with their guides, and it'll be like, yeah, I would like to come back again and finish that lesson.
yes, I agree with that. And I think that's why our guides kind of nudge us and push us towards thoughts and ideas and perspectives of exploring change and exploring, improvement. Because from the soul perspective, like you say, you are eager to do that. And so from the human perspective, that's what kind of comes in the way, overcoming the humanness so that you
Right,
can actually do the soul's work and what the soul wants you to do. And that's why we have guides to guide us along the way so that we don't get caught up in the humanness. And then in your book, you say that your guides never gave up on you. What did you mean by that? Is that kind of what you meant a little bit?
yeah, I mean, it's a human thing, they don't give up. I actually have experienced and we're told we have many spirit guides, and that's for all sorts of reasons. I have experienced one, which I'll talk about when I get to that chapter. That one, and I have just a connection where I can actually feel the guide and communicate. And then I have the council, and I'll talk about that later. But when I say never gave up on me, that's a human thing. The the guides will not, in my opinion, will not make you do something and interfere with free will. Like, let's say you are supposed to read a book. The guide won't like put an obsessive thought in your head. Read this, read this, read this, till the only way to get the thought out is to read the book. The guide will gently nudge you. But for example, the catch is that when I was so in my ego state while I was at work, the nudges stopped coming because I was closed to them. I was open to them for 10 years, not open enough to have an awakening, but open enough to see them and experience them. But then I closed myself off by trying to prove myself at work and marrying myself to my work. And so when I say don't give up on me, I mean, they just, there's no time in the spirit world, but so it's hard to, 22 years is nothing. But I was not open to that for 22 years, 23 years. So as soon as I was conditioned, I broke down. That was my undoing. That was my doing, I should say. Once I had recovered sufficiently, that opening was back enough to be able to hear them again. And at that was at the point when I was ready to hear them again. That was at the point where I got this like thought or communication that I needed, or it would be in my highest good to do the spiritual work again and work it. So that's what I mean by never give up. And they won't, they're there for us anytime we ask. And I could have had, and I may have had hundreds of lifetimes where I'm selfish, don't acknowledge the guides. They have an eternity, so they will be there whenever you ask, but they won't be there unless you ask.
Yes. So they are always there, but you hold the key to the communication and how much communication and all of that, which is, again, like you say, the free will of it. Do you
Right.
want to be guided or do you not? It's not a right or a wrong thing. It's up to you. And you can choose how walk that journey. Um, so when you were going through your dark night of the soul, I imagine that you didn't have much communication with your guides back then, or else it wouldn't be a dark night of the soul. What was that like for you?
I didn't have any. I forgot about it. I listened to the recording in 2001, and the two things that were on it that were crucial was I'd had a dream about my guide in 1998, and I didn't learn till I had the Life Between Lives when Michael Newton told me you can communicate with and ask for guidance anytime. You don't have to wait to have another dream. And I told him, oh, I didn't realize that. I missed that when I re-listened to it, and I missed the very end where I said that I needed to learn to unconditionally love myself. So I didn't even think about them. I like blocked it out. I blocked it out with a lot of trying to prove myself. It was so blocked out that I didn't even think about it. The only thing that changed during that period was I wasn't afraid of death anymore. But I blocked it out and I dropped all my friends that were, on my spiritual path with me. It was not pleasant. It- if trying to get satisfaction from work in the outside world, it never worked. Not, I would get, that's a good job, and the satisfaction would last about 2 minutes. And you know what they say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But now that I have it back, more than I had in 2001, which wasn't, I didn't allow myself much. It's amazing. And I'm like, how did I ever even survive for those 22 years?
I can relate to that. Like, I also look back at certain times in my life and I'm like, how did I survive that? How was I even alive? It's silly to think about because you cannot picture yourself any different than you are now, but yet you existed back then and you lived life and you did things and you woke up every day and you had, some kind of purpose that you were doing.
Yeah.
Um, so that takes me to my last question, and that is about the soul's blueprint. So this, I imagine it as literal blueprints that you would do, let's say if you're drawing up blueprints for a house or something. So it's a plan, it's a general plan, and I guess it can be altered over time as you live the life, perhaps. But what makes the soul blueprint special? Are there certain things that are like set in stone that will happen, or that you must go through? Are there certain key moments and points where you can change things and alter things? How does it work, or what do you know about it um, that makes it what it is?
Well, this again, everything I qualify with this is just my opinion, because I don't want to ignore the fact, and I feel I need to talk about it because people think about it, not just me, is that you look to parts of the world where people are starving and there's starving children and they don't live very long, and they're in a war-torn country, and it's just what we call awful. We're in countries where we have enough to do, and it doesn't look like they have a lot of free will or you know things like that. And that one, I had to really work with that one, and I know it's a little off topic, but it does have to go do with the soul's blueprint. But so on the free will, I want to add the amount of free will depends on the circumstances. But as hard as it is to believe and or to accept, and this doesn't diminish our ability to help people, souls choose the probability of a circumstance like that for soul growth. And it's like, why would I choose that? And a lot of regressions, especially in when Michael Newton started doing them, people were in the concentration camps and they could explain why they chose that. So the blueprint, what you do with, and the point of all this is what you can do with the blueprint depends a lot on what circumstances you've chosen. We can do a lot more with it if we're in an affluent nation and have enough to eat than we can if we're in starving children. The way I feel about the blueprint is, yeah, it is a map. I never felt like I chose every single circumstance in my life, like what I was going to buy at the supermarket tomorrow, or all my relationships. I tend to think of it as a general, and I didn't explore this. I could ask if I do another life between lives. The answer is I don't know. What I do know is that I chose my soul, I should say, chose the family I would be in, the fact, and as they chose me, chose certain life circumstances like being small and being bullied by other kids. That was a choice. That was on the what we call a blueprint, and some young adulthood experiences. I, except for my really strong feeling that I went off the blueprint in 2002, I not sure about the rest of it. I think, like I said before, it's easier to go off the blueprint when we're adults than it is as children. So as hard as it is to accept, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, if a child is being abused, the soul made that choice. And let me qualify that by saying, we don't know what, in any situation like that, abuse by spouses or abuse by children, neglect of children or abuse of children, by all means, if to my power, I would intervene to prevent the child abuse. So I'm not saying it to anybody, oh, it's the soul's choice. But the soul chooses those circumstances, at least at first, for some reason. Probably always already also, I think almost always chooses some way to overcome those circumstances. So it's hard. I mean, I don't know which are choices and which aren't. I think it's once we get older, it's easier to deviate from the blueprint. So I think we only choose key events, like our parents, close relationships, maybe career. I don't know even know about career. I think it's very general. That's my belief, but I honestly don't know. I went to a presentation by somebody at the conference, and they talked about this, and they drew like a blueprint, like a circle. This is the soul's blueprint. And then they drew like a bunch of squiggly lines and said, and this is what ends up happening. So I think we deviate from it more than we stay on it. It's like a vision board. It's like what the soul would ideally want, because the soul doesn't remember that it's dealing with a human brain and the ego is going to come into it. And so I don't think very many things are etched in stone. I do believe, as far as etched in stone, the birth and the death process, I do believe that the soul chooses what I call, or many call, exit points, where there's going to be a physical death, that there's more than one chosen. I don't know how many, but that, except in the extraordinary circumstance, anybody who does an LBL or any kind of meditation, those will not be unlocked. We won't know what they are. But there's still exit points. So I do believe that if I'm afraid I was going to be, I chose to be killed in a train wreck or whatever, and I say I'm not traveling that day, I'll have a heart attack. Because if it's the last exit point, and so I do believe that's on the blueprint and that's unchangeable, although there's a last one after which it's unchangeable. So the birth and the death, definitely. I think everything else after, maybe I can't even give an age, is changeable. And we don't know if we're supposed to change it or not, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I guess, none of us will truly know everything until we die. And then we
Right.
would know, everything. But I mean, nonetheless, it's super fascinating. It's really eye-opening. It gives me a wider perspective on a lot of things, as I'm sure it does for everyone who will read your book as well. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. And then
Yeah.
I'm
I
super
want to add,
excited.
may I add
Oh,
something?
yeah.
I'll be really fast, but I forgot to talk about the bad circumstances. One more thing, and I know we're wrapping up, but I try to remember too, for my own bad circumstances, that this is one lifetime out of hundreds,
Yes.
and that if I'm experiencing really bad circumstances, I might have chosen it because I was the perpetrator in another lifetime, and it might be that I wanted to experience being on the other side of that. So there's that too.
Yeah, the balance. You did speak about the balance earlier on. And I imagine that. And I think maybe when we discuss chapter two, we can go more in depth on what this balance is, and how it's different from a punishment of sorts. Because that's also another misconception when it comes to having multiple incarnations, or, reincarnation or things like that. There's this idea, a false idea, that it's all punishment related, so maybe we can get into that in our next discussion of chapter two. So thank you so
Sure.
much, Lynn. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And I will put all the links as usual in the description, the link to your website, your email, the link to your book on Amazon. And if I can just remind the readers who are purchasing and reading your book to always leave a review. It's super helpful for new authors. It really shows the book to more people who are interested in reading it. And, it gives Amazon all the right signals that this is a book to promote to more people. So please remember to do that. So thank you again. And I'll speak to you next time.
You're welcome.